What's up guys, thanks for checking out the ASAP Automotive channel, and today we're going to be showing you how to install an Aussie Locker. What's up guys, we're back at it again with another how-tos with Mike, and today we're working on a 93 YJ that we got in the shop. And with this particular situation, I figured it'd be great to do a set of videos on these for you guys because, like I said, we're putting a set of these Aussie Lockers front and rear in this thing. Guy just kind of tools around on his property, didn't want to, spend a ton of money, just wanted some way to kind of lock, put lockers in it where you can get better traction and not constantly get stuck in this thing. So we, the Aussie Locker was a perfect, candidate for that. It's simple. You just gut out the spider gears, put these things in, and we're going to show you guys today just how simple these things are. It's funny because they're an Aussie Locker, but they're 100% made in the USA. I think they're originally made in Australia or something, and now, but the company that actually makes them is the Torque Masters Industries. These things come highly recommended. I've done a couple of them over the years. They're pretty cool, simple. Little locker that functions, and it's still fairly streetable without too much hassle, especially bang for the buck. This is a way to go. So that being said, we're not sponsored by them or anything like that. They didn't send us these things. Just literally just one that came in. Customers said, hey, I want to put lockers. We found these, we ordered them, the customer's paying for them, and we figured, hey man, to make a great set of videos for you guys and show you how to do them. So let's get at it. So today, like I said, we're doing two separate videos on this. We're going to do the rear and do the front. Today in particular on this video, we're going to be focusing on the rear, which, like I said, has a Dana 35 in it. And that's going to take this kit here in particular for this 93. I think there's a couple different part numbers, especially for the front. So definitely check on their website. You can go to Torque Masters, TorqueMastersIndustries.com or whatever. We'll put a link below and all that fun jazz. But make sure you're ordering the right one. They got a cool thing where you can check by year, make and model, make sure you're getting the right part number, because you don't want to order the wrong thing and get midway in your driveway, try to put this in and you got the wrong one. So that being said, we're going to go and get at it and show you guys how to start doing this. Okay, so we're going a little bit further today. We're actually going to do axle bearings and seals in the back of this thing while we're at it, because the customer wanted to go ahead and do them while we're in there. But either way, one of the first things you got to do is get this thing jacked up off the ground to where your wheels can spin freely, because one of the first things you got to do is pull the wheels off. So do it in a safe manner. Make sure you're doing good. You're using good jack stands. Make sure you're on good ground. Don't be an idiot. So that being said, let's go ahead and pull this off. All right, the next thing we're going to do is come in here and go ahead and slide our drum off. Not the greatest looking, but it's got plenty of brake and shoe material. So while you're in here is a good time to go ahead and inspect, take a look at your brake shoes, see what kind of shape they look in. Same way with your drums. They're not the best, but they're not terrible. And he's just a little beat around toy, so that'll be good. We'll go ahead and clean all this up while we're in here. Now we'll be able to go ahead and slide these axles on out. So I'm gonna go ahead and snatch off the other tire and the other drum, and we'll show you guys the next step. So sometimes you might have to show a little love, especially as long as these things have been on, you get a little rust on there. Make sure you're always wearing safety glasses when you do that stuff. You can get sparks or shrapnel in. You don't want to get too crazy hitting with it, but just enough. So go ahead and slide that bad boy off. And about the same, got plenty of material on the shoes. Drums ain't too bad. Cool. All right, so the next thing you want to do is you got to come back here and go ahead and get your rear differential cover off to where we can get the fluid out and get access to everything we need. So you're going to want to go ahead and have some kind of drain pan or something underneath, at least somewhat of a decent size, because you're going to have at least anywhere from 2 to 3 quarts come out of there if it's up to proper level. Through the magic of film, we've already had this cover off and got it cleaned up, but you got a handful of bolts here. You pull them off, you got some kind of silicone or gasket behind it most likely. We'll go ahead and pull that off. And what you're going to want to do is, once you get it off, which I'm going to wipe this one down again because I got oil on it, is go ahead and clean it all up in here. clean up here and just kind of clean up. This is time where you can take and you can really get crazy with it, clean it all up really good and paint it whatever you want, or put some pretty chrome one on. Totally up to you. And then go ahead and clean your surface here. You get a good gasket scraper or something like that and some brake clean, maybe some Scotch-Brite pad, and go ahead and get this cleaned up. And so it should look something like that. And now we can go ahead and get our guts out. So the first thing you want to do is, you'll notice here, let me turn around so you guys can see what we're working with before we literally gut it. You've got 4 spider gears. This is a open differential, and I meant to preface that too. These Aussie Lockers only work in an open differential carrier assembly. And the carrier assembly is this housing here that goes into either side, and the bearings go on, and the ring gear bolts to. And these are what's called your spider gears in here. There's 4 of them, and then you got the little pinion shaft going across, and you can see the ends of your axle shafts in here, and then we've got little C-clips in there holding those in. We're about to pull all that out, but like I said, these Aussie Lockers only work on one of these carriers, so if yours came with a posi unit or something like that, you can't really use them. You got to go and find an open diff carrier, which at that point might kind of outweigh your costs. So that being said, let's rotate it around. And a lot of these Dana axles, some of the American axles, have this little bolt here that goes through that we're going to replace. I've got a new one. You always want to replace these if you pull one out, and it's cheap insurance, man. Dorman makes it. I think it's a 81048's the part number or something like that. Don't quote me. Check, for your particular application. But one of these bolts fails, man, this pinion shaft comes out and grenades a housing. It's not a fun day. That being said, a little 12-point quarter inch wrench on here, or socket, whatever your preference is, and then just go ahead and break that bad boy on loose, and go ahead and turn it on out, which I might switch to a ratchet. But we'll get that out. Next thing we'll be doing is sliding that. Alright, so what I like to do is go ahead and rotate it. I use a drive shaft, the yoke up there, just let this bad boy slide on out. Now, with this particular kit from, or this particular Aussie kit, it comes with a new pinion shaft, so we don't really have to worry. Some of these factory ones are a little soft, and these newer ones a bit harder. But if you're having to reuse yours, check along here and make sure you don't have any wear that you can feel with your finger or anything like that. Because then in that case, you definitely would want to replace it either way. So stop what you're doing, get one ordered. Because if that thing is wore out, it's just going to beat around in there and end up breaking that bolt and come out, and you're going to have a bad day. So that being said, let's get this. We're not going to end up reusing this because new one comes in a kit. Now what we do is rotate around, and as you do that, you notice that bottom spider gear is going to walk on out for us real nice like, and then it's got its own little washer on there. Now these side spiders like this, you want to make sure you take these out with it, because we're not going to reuse those. Unlike the ones on the axles back there, we're actually going to reuse those if they're still in good shape. Alright, so now we got our side spider gears out. We can go ahead and push our axles in and go ahead and get our C-clips out. And through this process, guys, like I said, take your time looking here, look for any abnormal wear or anything like that. Because if you got another issue going on, you don't want to be throwing this new locker in there and it's something else that's going to come apart and end up ruining that new locker, and you're wasting money. So if you come across any crazy abnormal wear or anything like that, where it's eating the housing, definitely stop and get, address that, figure out what's going on and take care of it. This one here, the wear on the teeth is pretty good. I mean, this thing's got like 200 something thousand miles on it, so I'm not expecting it to be perfect, but the teeth aren't sharp or anything crazy like that, and the wear pattern's pretty good. So you guys can find, if you look up, I'm sure you take it 2.2 seconds to pull up a good pictorial on proper wear on a ring and pinion. It'll show you, where, like if it's way out here, what it means, if it's way in or way out on the tooth or way in that way. There's a reason for each one, depending. That'll tell you, if this bearing's out or this bearing, yada yada. So that's easily found online. One day I might get the chance, we get a little fancier, we'll get some tutorials or video tutorials or something like that. So anyways, like I said, let's slide our axle on in, and just like that. Little horseshoe clip comes off. Like I said, check for any crazy wear. Everything looks good there. Now what we're going to do that on both sides, and then after we do that, then we're going to come out here and go ahead and slide our axle on out just enough so it's past. Now if you're just doing the differential or just doing this locker, that's all you really need to do. Like I said earlier, while we're in here, we're going to go ahead and do axle bearings and seals because the customer requested it. Said, hey, while you're in there, go and do it. And it's not a bad idea, guys. And we're going to show you how to do that here too, because it's a perfect time to do it. And you're looking, what, another 30 something bucks in parts, maybe 40. Definitely go with a national brand bearing and seal. Don't use a cheapy house brand crap. You guys are going to hate yourself. The metal in them sucks. They wear. You're going to be back in the same boat. I've had some of those cheapy ones literally break on me while trying to put them in because they just shatter. So that being said, we'll go ahead and actually, we're going to pull this axle all the way on out. Now, another good tip for you guys, and I had to explain to my apprentice why I was pulling the Jeep so far over this way on the lift. When you park this thing to go to work on this, and especially if you're doing axle bearings and seals, make sure you got enough room. Like if you're doing it in your garage, you got enough room to slide this axle all the way out, because that really sucks. You don't really need much if you're just doing the guts. That's cool, but if you're changing these seals and bearings, which you probably should, you're really gonna need some room. So we made sure we got plenty of room over there, because I've been in that boat and it sucks, because you gotta let it all down, move it over. It's a pain. So that being said, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna show you guys go ahead and pull these seals and bearings on out while we're in here. So now that we got our axles out, we're gonna come in here and pull over the spider gear. And did it? Nope, it stayed in there. Okay, oh, there it is. So this thrust washer here is what we're gonna reuse. So like I said, these ones on either side here, we don't reuse, but these ones for the axles we are going to, and you'll see why in a minute. So like I said, look for any abnormal wear, a little bit of hot spotting, not really anything bad. I think it's just normal, but this feels really good, doesn't feel beat up. So, and we're gonna do the same thing over here. We're gonna go ahead and get this cleaned up a little bit, so we got some good clean surfaces, and then we're gonna show you how to start going back together with the new Aussie Locker. Okay, so these are those little thrust washers that we were just talking about earlier, and this is where we're going to reuse them. So I try to lay them out to where I know which side they came on. This is the one that come off the driver's side. They kind of wear in a certain place, and does it really make a difference? Probably not, but just being extra careful. So that being said, what we're going to do is actually go ahead and take some like just regular red axle grease and kind of smear along here on the surface. And what this is going to do is when we set this up in there, it's going to help keep it up in there and not falling out all over the place to make it a little bit easier to work with. So do this, and then we're going to put our thrust washer on and give it a little bit of dab. And this is also going to help to kind of pre-lube anything, kind of like when you're putting an engine together, you know, assembly lube. It's going to help it before the gear oil warms up and really gets into all these places, so you're not running it dry. Now what we're going to do is go ahead, and this is one of the side axle gears. You noticed it's splined. This is that thrust washer where we put it on, and you've got this spacer, and the spacer goes on this way. You got that step inside. That step is actually what's going to retain that C-clip in a little bit, and you'll see when we bring the axle through, it'll keep it from ever trying to fall out. So we're going to go ahead and set this side in, and we're going to do the same thing to the passenger side, and then we're going to take us a measurement on our gap. All right, so you guys see that axle grease helps to kind of keep it all in place, because that little spacer otherwise wants to fall out. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and put our passenger side all in the same way, and then we're going to put our pinion shaft back in. All right, so now we got our hole lined up here, and what we're going to do is just for now, just slide, okay, just slide the bolt in enough to kind of retain it, because what we're going to do is rotate back, we're going to come in here and come in with a pry bar and pry either way to kind of press these back, because we got some grease in there, and we kind of want to press it all the way back now. And we're going to take a measurement on either side of this shaft for clearance and see if we're in spec according to the Aussie Locker manual. All right, so now that we went ahead and, like I said, got in there and pried against both sides to push it to kind of splooge out any of the grease and give us a better reading. Now what we got to do is take a measurement on either side of this shaft in between the spacers and see what our gap is. Their spec on there is saying anywhere from, it should be anywhere from 6 thousandths to 20 thousandths. So what I'm going to do is shove a 6 thousandths feeler gauge in there. Guys, don't laugh, this thing's literally probably 50 years old, and see, and fits in there pretty good either way. Got plenty of gap, and so the theoretically 20 thousandths should just fit, or not, you know, or just not fit, and yeah, we can't fit it in there, so we're within spec. So that's good. That means that our side thrust washers are good and everything. We don't have to go in there and change anything, which is good. Keeps it simple. Now what we're going to do is actually go back in and pull this pinion shaft back out, and we're going to go ahead and put our C-clip back on the driver's side first. All right, so I almost forgot in this particular one, we're actually going ahead and doing the axle bearings and seals. So we're going to go ahead and snatch these out before we go start putting our C-clips and all back in. So the way you can do that is you want to get you a drain pan under here, which I will in a second. But you got a little seal remover like this. If you got a slide hammer, you can actually, which you're really going to need a slide hammer for this anyways, you can run your little screw in there. Sometimes you got a little attachment that you can do that, and then slide it out that way. I like using these, so just normally come in here, catch in behind that seal like that, and then just there we go. Okay, so now we got our seal out of the way. Now we can get in here and get our axle bearing out. And the way we do that is it's actually a little kit of these so you can get. This is actually a Harbor Freight one I've had for years. Rear axle bearing puller set. You can find them online anywhere, parts store or whatever. You can, I think you can rent them from a parts store. But what this does is goes in behind here, and then catches on the back side of the bearing. And what you do, slide this little washer up and then run this nut down to where it kind of keeps it against it, because what you're going to do is come back and screw your slide hammer in, and then come out here, and that slide hammer is going to work and knock that thing out. Okay, so got our end attachment on for the bearing puller. You know, the nut all the way down, that way it kind of holds it together, that way it doesn't jump out on you while you're sliding the hammer. Got our slide hammer threaded in. Now let's go run our jam nut down. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and come here and just knock the bearing on out. And boom goes the dynamite. That's it. Now we're going to come in here and go ahead and wipe this surface down and clean it up, and we'll get ready and we'll show you how to install the new bearing and seal. Cool. And we're seated down in there, and now we can go ahead and put our seal back in. All right, now that we got our bearing seated in there, we're going to go ahead and put our seal in. And like I said, we're going to take a little bit of axle grease here and just kind of come on around, just lube it up a little bit, and then actually use the same tool and install it on in there. now we got our new seal in there. We can go ahead and wipe down and clean up our axle and clean up our surface where the bearing and the seal is going to ride on. And then the same in there. And I'll show you guys in a quick second how to do that. All right, so now what we're going to do is go ahead and wipe off, clean off the axle shaft itself. And what we're going to focus on is this surface here. This is where your bearing and your seal rides on. If you got any kind of crud in there, you can burn up a new seal. Then over here, we're going to clean up here where the C-clip goes in, make sure we don't have any debris, make sure the splines are okay, and then we can slide it back in. So what we're going to do is take some of the Scotch-Brite pad here and get this out of the way, come along here and just clean up a bit of the crud and all that. You don't need to get crazy. And it should look something like that. Come back and just wipe it off with a rag. Now we can go ahead and slide it back in. Now we don't want to slide it all the way back in just yet until we get ready to put our C-clips and stuff in, and we'll get to that in a second. I'm going to knock out the other side, get the other axle set back in, and then we'll show you how to install your C-clips and finish out the rest of the Aussie Locker. Now we got our axle bearings and seals in. We can go ahead and start putting our axles in and putting our C-clips in. And the first one we're going to do is this driver's side here. So we're going to go ahead and slide it on through, just like that. What we're going to do is go ahead and slide, see that groove in there, just like it came out. Slide it back in, and now we're going to pull the axle back out towards the outside, and that way it'll seat it and keep it from falling out. There you go. Okay. Now we can go on to our next step. Alright, so now what we're going to do is go ahead and put our center gears in, or cam gears, whatever you want to call them. And how we're going to do that is, this is going to face, this two sides going to obviously face the axle gear. So we're going to put some grease around here and a thin layer on the axle gear also to help retain it in. We're going to put some grease around this this little cover piece here, or retainer, whatever you want to call it. And it's going to go in like that. The lip will face, will be going this way, because what that does is cover the end of the axle and the C-clip that we just put in to keep it from falling out. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get this greased up, and then the next thing we're going to do is we got some pins and springs that are going to go in these four positions. Now the position here, the slotted side, is where your pins are going to go in. And what you want to do is take your little pin like this, and you see it's got a dimpled end there. That end is going to go down this way in the slot, down into that little divot that's down in there. What you're going to do is pack you some grease in there and pack it in there. That way it'll stay in there and won't be falling out while you're trying to mess with all this. And so what we're going to do is go ahead and get at that. Alright, so now we got our grease on. Got a grease on a little center cover or retainer or whatever. And then we're going to do is a pin. So like I said, the dimpled end is going to face down towards the bottom of the groove. You see with that grease in there, it's going to hold it in there nice until we can get in there and do what we got to do in a second. Just going to put the second pin in. That bad boy in there like so. Now, slide it. Take the, you got your flat edges here. That's going to allow you to slide it on in like so. Actually, I threw that in there wrong. Sorry. This spacer, or this cover, goes over this way from the inside. I had it right, and I just put it back in wrong. So now we go this way and slide that retainer in. And now you can see how that grease helps hold everything in place. And we'll come back and we'll worry with those pins in just a second once we get the other side in. So, all right, so we got our snap ring back, or not a snap ring, our C-clip back on for the axle. We've already pulled it back out to keep tension on it. We're going to go ahead and put our retainer in there like so, down in here. We've already got those pins in we talked about earlier with the grease. They're facing down there and just chilling. And what we're going to do is go ahead and you'll see these flat sides. We're going to go ahead and slide this bad boy on in here like so. And set it on up like that. Push that retainer on back in. And That way we've got as much space as possible. So you notice things are getting really tight here. We're running out of room really quick. So in the manual they talk about taking like a little 6-inch piece of coat hanger, wire coat hanger. Obviously plastic's not going to bend too well unless you heat it. But anyways, you take about 1 inch on each end, bend it 90 degrees, and that'll give you a nice tool to get in here and work, and you'll see why in a second. So this is all pushed back. Now we're going to do is go ahead and put our other side in. You notice we haven't put our C-clip in, because we do, that's going to take up more room than we've got to work with. So we'll have to come back in a second, do that, and we'll show you how to do that. All right, guys, so same thing, you know, pins are in, that retainer's in the same way. Now, if you'll notice, this slot here, it's actually on both sides. Those sides can go either way, the same part number. This right here is going to allow us in a second to slide our C-clip on in here. So, that being said, we're going to go ahead and take our flat sides, go ahead and slide it on in. Now, sometimes you might run into issues with it, either one of these catching on the housing here because it gets a little tight. You might need to come in here and file this down a little bit, especially if you got some flashing on either side. We're just barely good enough that we can tap ours in. We'll go ahead and slide it on in just like so. Go ahead and grab the dead blow and finish it on up. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now what we can do is rotate it on around, and this is where that cool little tool is going to come into play. You can get in there and slide that retainer on back, and then we can put our C-clip in, pull the axle back out, and then we can slide this back over and the retainer back over and start working with our pins and all. Alright, so you can make that tool, and it's really cool, and it's super cheap because you probably have some wire coat hangers hanging around. I just like to use a pick. So good angled pick like this, you can get in there, go ahead and slide your retainer on back, out of the way like yeah. And now you got a clear shot. So now we'll come in and slide our axle on through till we get boom, just like that. Now we can slide our C-clip in there, and once we slide it in, pull our axle back out, come back here and push our retainer back. Clip in there. What we're going to do is go ahead and just slide our axle on over. Now it's got tension on it. Now we can come in here, slide this over. What you do is rotate it around. Now you can really see in there and push your retainer all the way back over against there, and we can go ahead and start dealing with our pins. Okay, so what you want to do is line up to where you've got this nice perfect circle here, and what we're going to do is we've lined up over here where our hole is. We're going to take our pins now and slide them over, and now we get to put these little springs in, which is really the fun part. And there you go. So the springs should go in like that. They set down in here in this little groove here, and they go over that dimple on the pin. That's why we face the pins that way. So you push them on back like that. What we're going to do, I threw this center pin in there to just kind of keep everything somewhat aligned, and we'll go through and do the same way to the other three. You good? All right, guys, so what you're going to want to do is before you put your springs and stuff in is go ahead and rotate this around to where it's close to your centers, like here. We're just bringing it off a little bit so we can put our springs, because otherwise, once it's out like that, it won't rotate around in most cases, because you'll notice it's got this beveled edge here, so we've got some room to play. So make sure you go ahead and rotate it around in that position before you start putting your springs in. And they go in just like this. Just push them on back. They're gonna fight, so just like that. All right, now we'll rotate around onto our next one. All right. Oh, no, let's rotate back a little bit more. All right, that works perfect. Okay. All right, now that we got our springs in, we got everything lined back up, we can go ahead and slide our pin straight on through and just kind of work it on through. Make sure you're lined up to where your bolt can go on through like so. All right, and now we'll get our bolts in there. We're gonna put us a little bit of Loctite. Ooh, or a lot of Loctite. Okay. And slide it in like so. And then we'll go ahead and snug that on down. Like I said, I think spec's actually like 102 inch-pounds, so 12 inches in a 12 inches in an inch-pound, so not many. So like 5 or like, I don't know, quick math. Can't do it right now, it's late. Anyways, we're gonna snug it down. We're gonna go ahead and put our we'll do a spin test on this thing to make sure everything's functioning right. And after that, we can go ahead and silicone and put our cover back on. All right, so once you get everything back together, we need to make sure, check our gap here, which should be 0.145 to 0.170, I think is what they were saying. So kind of hard to get in here, but yeah, we're 0.146. A little awkward getting in here. We'll probably do it with a feeler gauge, but either way, we're pretty good there. So yeah, just check, make sure your gap is in with that range, and if so, then you're good. Now you can go ahead and proceed with putting your drums back on, putting your wheels on, and doing a spin test on it. And we'll show you how to do that in a second. Once it passes the spin test, we'll put our cover back on and fill it full of oil. Now we're going to go ahead and do what's called the spin test, and we're going to make sure we got proper function in the ratcheting mechanism in there. So that being said, what we're going to do is, you need it off the ground still where the tires can spin. You need another person helping you out. And what they're going to do, like right now, I'm going to have him go ahead and hold pressure. We've got it in gear, by the way, and in four-wheel drive, so the drive shaft won't move. I'm going to have him actually hold rearward pressure against it until it stops. And then what I'm going to do in kind of a quick jerking motion, go forward with mine, and we should hear a nice ratcheting function, and the wheel should spin. So. Just like that right there. Now what we're going to do is do the opposite. I'm going to have him hold forward pressure on it, and then what I'm going to do is, in a quick jerking motion, rotate it around in reverse, and we should get the same result. There you have it. It's doing what it's supposed to. And you can do it the other way on the other side. We've already done that, but it's the same thing on either side. Just make sure it's in gear, the drive shaft's not able to move, and then go ahead and hold pressure one way on one tire and spin the other one in a quick jerking motion the other way, and then once you get it going, just let it roll. That kind of lets it kind of seat in a little bit. These things have got like a 600-mile break-in period, so it might be a little glitchy at first, but after a while they'll seat in pretty good, and they're pretty good on the road. They're pretty well mannered for what they are. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and torque our lugs down, and then we're going to go ahead and silicone where our cover is and put that back on and bolt it down, and then we can fill it full of fluid. All right, so now we got our surface all cleaned up, and we got our silicone on around here. I went ahead and just put a bead. I like using this Right stuff. It's from Permatex. It's high vibration. It's pretty good. Just a nice, good, even bead. Kind of even that out a little bit there. Got a little boogered up, but it's all good because it's all going to splooge out the same. gonna put too much on there. That might actually be a little much, but what you do is set it on up just like that, and go ahead and line up like so, and then start putting your bolts in and just go around once you get them started. You do is go ahead and get them started, and then go around and just kind of barely snug them a little bit. Let this sit for a few 15 minutes or so. Let it kind of cure a little bit, and then you can, you know, kind of snug it on down. You don't get crazy and like splooge a mess out of it and splooge it all out, but just enough that it's good and snug. But you want it to kind of set up for a little bit, and then after that, to be honest, like tonight, I'm just going to leave this thing sit overnight and come back in the morning and then fill it full of gear oil. I think this stuff is like 90 minutes. You could probably do it or something in a couple of hours maybe, but I'm kind of done for the night anyways. It'll be good. That way it's good and set up, and that way that oil doesn't get, or that gear oil doesn't get down in there and mess it up and start leaking, and then you're back to square one. So, well guys, that's a wrap again on another episode of How To's with Mike. You know, this one being on putting an Aussie Locker in the back. Hopefully that'll help you guys out if you're trying to do one or thinking about doing one. It's really a pretty good little job. You can definitely do it in your garage or your driveway. A few simple tools. Just take your time a little bit and be patient with it. If you're mechanically inclined, pretty much like they say, if you can do brakes, you can do this. So I got faith in you guys. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys will like and subscribe if you hadn't already. Don't forget to check out our sister channel, my dad's MacGyver's Workshop. He does all kind of cool stuff like this too. So if we don't have a how-to on there, most likely he might have one on there for you. So remember, until then, next time, stock is not an option.